So, for the camera's point of view, so it's actually just slides, not camera. I would like to introduce Declan Ingram from CERT. Everyone, please give him a round of applause.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Kurt.
Would you be able to flip the light switch behind you? Thanks.
Sweet as. So I'll go into CERT in a second, just because that's the order of my slides. But yeah, as Kurt mentioned, I'm the operations manager of CERT. So we're a new thing reasonably. We have been live for a little bit less than a year. And we're a entirely government funded information security aggregator and advocate. The whole CERT thing, CERT, stands for Computer Emergency Response Team. And it started 30 odd years ago at Carnegie Mellon University in response to the Morris worm, when people were like, hey, we need some kind of emergency response team for computers. Right? That's literally how it began. Since then, all sorts of different countries and organizations and everything else have all got together and started that. I spent a lot of my life being a pen tester, so just breaking things, pointing and laughing over and over again for 10 years before I started to feel a sense of emptiness and needed to do something a little bit more meaningful. Throughout that time, I also did a lot of incident response, and that was just because when you're around computers doing this stuff going back, quite a while, you're just, the person that knows the stuff about security, even if you're the firewall guy or the whatever. So every time something went boo in the night, people just sort of dragged you in and expected you to unravel it and work out what the dealio was. That's going to be fun.
Do you know my password?
Yeah, hang on.
Just shout it out for the stream.
I think I probably shouldn't walk away from my computer.
You can just leave your finger there.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Sorry.
Do we need to like redo the Web 2.0 thing?
No, but I think I didn't start it. I think they can hear you, but they couldn't see anyway. So
oh, okay.
Now they can see.
They can see as well?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. One of the things that really obsessed me throughout my entire career is actual meaningful data, because so much of stuff is because security, right? People will go, you need to do blah, blah, blah because security. And it's just so much of it is so meaningless. It's so ungrounded. And that was what got me interested in this whole concept of CERT, because the primary function that we have is being that emergency response team. But it's not just for an organization or for a government department or a bunch of them, but it's for absolutely everybody. And if the thingy works, is the thingy supposed to work?
Oh, it's focused issues, isn't it? There we go.
All right, sweet as. We're having some real techno troubles at the moment, but down there it says individuals, and that's the core thing that is really, really important about us as an organisation, is that we actually serve all New Zealanders. So any one of you guys or girls can contact the CERT and say, hey, I have a problem and I want to talk about it, and we will help you through it. And
is that really off-putting?
Not really. It still cuts it off though.
Must be a font thing.
Yeah, sorry, it's probably just my slides. Yeah, so that gives us really meaningful data of things which are actually important on a larger scale. Because the important thing to remember is that even, the largest companies, the largest departments, the largest organizations, they're all just made up of people. And that's something that's been kind of fascinating me. And what we've seen today and what we've drawn upon for the three things that I'm going to talk about today is just the volume of websites getting hacked and what it really means and what really happens and everything else. Because just to get an understanding of sort of the people that are here, how many people are just pure developers, web developers? And penetration testers? None. Excellent. And what's
infrastructure?
Infrastructure people, yeah. What's the remainder? 60% are unaccounted for.
How many people just came?
Compliance?
Education.
Education, yeah. Bit of everything. The person that does all the things.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Sysadmins. Okay, cool. Well, that's good because there's going to be a lot of stuff for wide audiences there. So what we did is we literally just looked by numbers across all the things that we're seeing reported to us, and picked out the big ones. There is no like deep dive case studies in here for such and such organization, this happened, and insert some kill chain here and all of that kind of stuff. I've just gone for the broad brush strokes. What are the real issues? What are the root causes of things that we're seeing? Some of them are assumptions, and I will specifically talk about that. And the other thing is that there are a few faces that I recognize, but who was at OWASP in Auckland? Couple? Okay, not that many. That's good.
Best conference ever.
This is, spoiler alert, this is the same stuff that I spoke about up there. So if there was if there was enough people that had already been up there, then we'd just go through this quickly and then I talk about something else that would be more interesting. But there you go. You weren't there, so I'll go through it. But it's really about the common threads and about the root causes. And at any point, feel free to ask questions, counterpoints, anything like that. That's all really, really good. The first one that we see quite a lot of is bad hosting. And I knew that this was bad because you just inherently know that it's bad, but once you start getting the actual real data, you start to see what it's all about, and you see what really occurs. And the scenario that I've put up there is insanely common. Someone's just created a great new website. They spend all their money on the fancy little widgets and the menus that do just the right things and all of that kind of stuff. And they go, sweet, well, here's some hosting for $20 a month. Oh, no, wait, here's another one for $9 a month. Oh, no, wait, there's one for $2.50 a month. And then they go for the $2.50 a month or whatever. And they get a host that's shared with 5,000 other websites and hasn't been patched since WordPress 2.4 or whatever. And who'd have thunk it, they have a really bad time. We see this the shared hosting thing, one site gets hacked, all sites get hacked. We see this sort of thing anecdotally more than we have the data of it was this particular server at this particular hosting site. But things get hacked in groups and there are patterns, because if you're going to write, it's, from what we see, people don't just go, oh, I'm just going to hack this website. Oh, I'm just going to hack that one. They'll go, I'm going to write a little exploit and I'm going to go out and I'm going to own all of the PHP whatever sites. And then I'm going to have 200,000 servers at my fingertips to do whatever I want with. And I might sell them. I might, install a botnet on some of them. I might flog some of those other ones off. I might mine Bitcoins on these ones, all of that kind of stuff. And so you can start to see the larger patterns of everything that's going on. But all of that is essentially irrelevant, because the important thing is that people just get proper, decent hosting. Think about the hosting. I know from my pen testing days of working with an organization doing design reviews, doing code reviews, doing penetration test of final product, 3 months after it went live, it gets hacked because they put it on a crappy host that hadn't patched anything, and it was a complete nightmare. So, as web developers and as, sysadmins and people that just make things work from technology for their organizations, having some input into making sure that where you're getting your stuff hosted is actually really good and actually really sound, and not just it's in the cloud so it's not our problem, is a really, really important thing to have. And this one, the last point here, which is around the meaningful incident response capability, it's remarkably common for once someone's gone through the process of actually convincing someone, as in the organization that's providing the hosting, that there's a security problem, for them not just go, oh, okay, host is host, take backup of data, re-image host with all of the same vulnerabilities that it used to have, and then put the data back up, and then there you go, right, your server's done now, you've rebuilt it. It wasn't a managed service, so we're going to charge you a few $100 for it. Meanwhile, it's still unpatched. It hasn't got any of the stuff that it needs to have in terms of hardening. There's probably no meaningful logs whatsoever. And all of those things make it impossible for people to work out what actually happened. So if you're trying to roll incident response on a website and you ask for the logs and you get the database logs and it says database started, database stopped, database started, database stopped, that's not going to help you. So when you're going through and thinking about the hosting, make sure that you actually have an understanding of, how many other sites are going to be on there. And if you're sharing your hosting with 2,000 other sites, how many code execution vulnerabilities are they going to have that's going to get you compromised? Anyway, you guys get the idea. That's it's quite a common one, and it's really bad, and it's really easy to avoid.
What is a good hosting you can suggest in New Zealand?
I don't know. I don't know because I haven't tried to look. The stuff that we do for CERT in terms of our systems, so we've got a few hundred servers that we use for all these different wonderful purposes. We actually just we just rent some data center space and we do it all ourselves, like it's 1995, and it's wonderful and I love it. But it also works really, really well, and it gives us a lot of flexibility, and we don't have to worry about all of this kind of stuff. But if you're looking for hosting, there's, it's all the stuff like, is it going to get patched? Do you have logs? All of those kinds of things. And I think that the best way to do it is just to go down and write down all of these things as requirements, send them to the different hosting companies that you're looking at, and seeing what comes back. And if you get some engagement coming back and saying, yes, we do these things, and here are the things that say, and blah 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 blah, they're going to be the ones to go for.
So I've seen people come back and say it costs extra for security things like 2FA, or we'll give you access to logs and that kind of stuff. So I would be wary of places that will charge you extra for security, because they're hosting things. They're hosting PHP things that people can just upload old versions of WordPress to that will get owned on the same box. As Declan said, you need to ask. There's some processes. I think OWASP has some stuff on stuff to actually ask, do they have an incident response plan? There's a whole bunch of compliance stuff as well that you can ask.
Yeah, it's on our list of things to write and put up on our website as a guide, but that list is very long, and I don't actually know where in the list it is, but we're getting through it slowly.
So for smaller sort of websites, like say a business that is static HTML, would you recommend something like S3 as a good solution for them? Because then they don't have to look after a whole server and they're not dealing with server side.
It's hard to sort of make a CERT endorsement on any particular way of doing anything like that, but making sure that if you are not using things and you have an opportunity to have a system or a solution that only gives you what you need and not everything else, then that's going to give you a smaller code footprint, which is going to mean less bugs and less patching and less mucking around, which is always going to be a good thing.
Oh, I forgot to say something at the beginning, which is we're recording the audio and the slides. So if you're not comfortable asking a question and it being online forever, then don't ask it. Sorry about that. If you're, we can edit you out if we really have to.
So this data is New Zealand-based businesses.
Yes.
And is it only New Zealand-based hosting, or
no? So the way that the constituency works is people can report to us if they're in New Zealand, if the systems are in New Zealand, or if they're complaining about someone else and that someone else is in New Zealand. So, for example, we work with certs overseas that are doing botnet takedowns, and they'll come to us and they'll be like, here are all of the IPs of these particular botnets that are doing bad things in New Zealand. Can you go and sort that out? Okay, thanks. Or, yeah.
Yeah. And so then my question is, do people tend to be biased? Like how much bias is there towards hosting New Zealand versus overseas? Because generally, if you're hosting in New Zealand, going to be more expensive. We don't have the scale, right?
Yeah. I have actually never run a report on the IPs that we've got and what ASN they're associated with. We certainly have the ASN mapping in terms of vulnerabilities and in terms of malicious activity, botnets, etc. But I've never done that for incidents. I'll probably do it in the future now that you sparked it. But yeah, I haven't actually looked. Yeah. The next one is, this is so incredibly simple, and I really didn't expect this to be a thing, but it's actually really big. It happens a lot. Not renewing domains. And I don't know if it's just people having businesses and they're just not thinking about the maintenance of their website. They pay their money each month and they go, yep, that's my website sorted out, or what it is. But it's really, really common for someone to call us up and go, my website's been hacked. And we're like, oh, okay, let's have a look at it. We're like, oh, yep, that doesn't look like what your company would be selling. That looks like something that I probably shouldn't have off in the office. True story. And then we do a who is, and it's like someone that's clearly not the person that we're talking to. And do search engine optimization, all sorts of things associated with getting around the risk-based filtering. So, if you fire up a server, register a domain, and within 30 minutes you're out running a phishing campaign on everyone, it's going to get blocked straight away. But if you buy a domain that's got a website, that website's existed for 6 years and it's trusted and it's had SSL certificates and all that kind of stuff, the browsers are going to trust it more, so that when you start doing a phishing campaign and everything else, the Googles of the world like, oh yeah, that seems like legit. Now, it's not always going to work, but it's going to help increase the trust rating on all of those risk-based filters. And the other way that we see it used is when you have a website which is kind of looks legitimate and it's, legitimate website's been used for a long time, someone will wait for it to expire, buy it, make the same website again, but make subtle changes into it to link through to another site so that they can get that search engine optimization boosting going on. That's really common as well. And it truly blew my mind when we started going through this data and having these things being reported to us, but it's super, super common. So I'll be with you in 1 second. But as the IT people and as the people that are looking after this infrastructure and everything else, make sure that you know the people that are going to get the expiry emails for your domains, and make sure that that person knows the responsibility that they have. Because if someone was to go in there and phish them and take over those domains, host them somewhere else, or do anything else, they can compromise all your customers and all bets are off, right? If your DNS gets hacked through the people that receive these emails and action all that kind of stuff, that's going to be bad. That's going to be really, really bad. And keep track of them. Don't let them expire. You'll receive lots and lots of emails about it before anything bad really, really happens.
Do you have much many issues with people who feel that they want to let a domain expire and then suddenly realise, oh wait, I've actually got this domain on the side of a box on the support listing thing, or oops, that's right, I need that thing for that password reset. Someone else has bought it now and they've used that password reset to take over this other account. Do you have any of those particular issues as well, where you actually encourage people to always
DNS shenanigans is unacceptably high, right? That's my personal opinion. We see all that sort of stuff. Letting domains expire that are associated with a business is enormously risky, especially when you have businesses that have a model of growth by acquisition and moving and changing names. If your business has even just microsites for specific advertising campaigns and other bits and pieces, all of those things can have all sorts of remnants associated with either cloud infrastructure or even specific infrastructure that's directly associated with your organization. And so managing all of the domains as assets and making sure that once you use something, you can't just forget about it and let it expire, because that old, even if you were to go through a whois of your company and find that some domains are registered with email addresses of the old name of your company that you've let expire, that sort of stuff is horrendously common. So everyone needs to go back and double check that for your organization. The whole domain name hygiene thing is terrifying. So, you know, sort that out. That'd be great.
Have you come across like domain transfer fraud? Like, that is like a code, like transfer to a different domain. Yeah,
not off the top of my head, but I have certainly seen it in other jurisdictions. The kind of the scope of DNS shenanigans is broad, and we do see a lot of incidents that I don't go through personally, all of them. The ones that I know of are where there are a number of things or where there's something that's sort of specific, but it's definitely a thing. Yeah.
So for everyone else, there are websites that will list expiring domains and let you buy them. So don't expect that no one will realize that your domain has expired, because people will look for this stuff. Some of the people are evil. Some of the people are like blue team good guys that will buy your domain and look for all the phishing emails, because in order to get phishing emails to analyze them, you need like an established presence that people, the bad guys, will send phishing emails to. So like buying defunct company domain names is great, or if you're a good guy and you want to see what people are up to for like phishing emails and stuff, because a 10-year-old business that has a 10-year-old domain name will get lots of phishing emails. And so you can just buy up the domain names and get the phishing emails, and you can go and say, hey, this is what you see phishing emails.
Yeah.
But again, bad guys will do the same thing, and as Declan said, like do password resets, all kinds of evil things.
Yeah.
And if you have a link on your website to one of your affiliates that does this, that lets their domain expire, now people clicking on the link on your website will now get redirected to a phishing or some bad sites. So
it's
there's lots of DNS, like getting your DNS the DNS registrar being hacked is really bad. So there's lots of dodgy, well, I can't say dodgy.
Just let him talk.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And just one thing to add, in terms of those websites that sell domains, and this is specifically around the ones that are used for search engine optimization, which is probably the least nefarious way that you could, use this whole DNS shenanigans stuff. They'll go through and they'll list the expiring domains by value for SEO. So you can be like, well, I can buy this domain for $25 and it's valued at like $2,000 a year. Winning, right? That's economy. That's why it happens. It's not probabilistic risk management. It's the economy of security. So people will notice, it will happen, and it does happen quite a lot. The whole domain name security and the domain name shenanigans is a huge can of worms. And that's something that we are, looking at with quite a significant magnifying glass, because, it's complicated. The way that it all happens is complicated. There are more than 100 RFCs for DNS. There's so much room for error here. In fact, BGP and DNS are probably the two scariest things on the internet. But that's a whole nother talk. Now, the third one that I'm going to go through is it's really sad. And I apologize that I'm going to go up here and talk about it, but it's here because the data tells us that we have this problem and that we need to talk about it. Yeah. So this is still a thing, right? I have sat down on a Friday afternoon after getting a phone call at 4 p.m. from someone that had a family business online. It was completely hacked up the wazoo. It was malicious. Customers had lost lots of money. Bank had completely gone crazy at them. They'd lost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the reason why, they didn't know anything about computers. They asked someone to build them a website and put it on the internet, and they did. And they made the password admin 01. All right? That's appalling. The person that went through, it was obviously not a deliberate thing, you know, but the person that set that site up, just that simple little act completely destroyed these people's lives. And going back to what I was saying before about the most interesting thing about CERT is the fact that because we're interacting with the human beings, right, the normal people of New Zealand, and we're finding out what's actually happening, is we're bridging the gap between this kind of ethereal, because security, space that so many of us live in, through to the actual real people with actual real life consequences of stuff. And that's something that really sort of brought home to me the importance of what it is that we as technologists, working for people that are just, I don't know, is calling non-technical people normals, is that offensive? I'm not quite sure. It's one of those things that is sort of in my mind, I always sort of think about them as the normal ones, and we're the ones that have to try and translate our world and theirs. You know, it's our responsibility to be that conduit, and that Admin 01 thing really, as just one example, drives it home for me. But that's just so important, and no one here wants to be that person that just frivolously made that small insignificant decision that had that huge consequence at the end of it. But you know, default passwords on software that people install, and password reuse. A frightening number of people contact us, and they're very concerned because they've had a large number of things in their lives compromised. Whether it's someone that's deliberately mucking with them, or whether it's just a whole bunch of different things. And when that's occurring to you, and you know, your phone, your computer, your Gmail, your everything is being compromised, and you can see because of different reasons, it has an enormous emotional effect on you, and they're all linked. So I'm a Google free person, but a lot of people are not. I'm not an Apple free person, right? I have an Apple ID, I have an iPhone. If you were to have an Android and you have your Google ID and you sign into a computer because you want to get your personalized browser experience, someone can go into that browser and install things on your phone, right? That's a thing that happens. And if you've got the same password reuse across all of these different things, you know, you're going to have a really bad time. If you've used that for dodgy website abc123.com and you've used it for your Gmail, and that one gets, you know, the dodgy website gets hacked, it ends up in has I been owned, and then suddenly your whole life is gone because you're sharing the passwords across all the different things. That's bad enough for you, but what happens if you've also shared that password across your customers and your workplace and everything else? Suddenly the scope of this becomes really quite bad. Is everyone familiar with that website? Sweet. Totally worth grabbing domains that you own, registering it with them so that when your users and new things come up, you get a little email that says, hey, check this out, there's another one. That's quite worthwhile. So we don't run that website. I don't know Troy Hunt, the guy that does. He could go bad tomorrow and turn it into something that's really awful. But I hope that he doesn't, because it's a fantastic site. But I really strongly recommend, and you know, when people talk about passwords and password policies and all that kind of stuff, everyone wants to make passwords that are impossible for us to remember, easy for computers to hack. You know, if you have a password which is long and easy to remember, like, you know, a sentence instead of a, you know, AF exclamation GG753 or whatever, right? Have like a whole sentence about it, and have a password manager so that you're not using the same one across all of the different sites. At CERT, just to do my day-to-day basic life, I think I'd need to remember about 17 passwords to like check a website and check my email. But that would be terrible. So we have YubiKeys instead, and the little thing flashes and I push the button and magic happens. So there are better solutions for passwords, and it's a great, it's never been easier to augment your passwords with something better. And certainly the two-factor authentication or in YubiKeys and all that kind of stuff, A+. It's cheap, it's easy, it's a usability thing, and it just makes everything much easier. Don't be one of these people that fall victim to this stuff, because the number of things that get reported to us that come down to a bad password, or a password that was good but was reused across multiple sites, and it was found in a dump, and yeah, everyone just started using it. That's also kind of bad, because all of the dumps have got most of the dumps. They're going to have the username as an email address, and they're going to have your email address. They're probably going to have the IP that you last logged in on, and all sorts of crazy stuff is going to end up in there. So make a password. This is one of the things that I've been trialing with people. Your password is probably going to get compromised at one point in its life, right? So make a password you're proud of. I'm looking forward to the day where some website that I use gets hacked, and I can have like a decent password, and I can be like, yep, that was my password, and I'm proud of it. And I encourage people to make passwords that they feel that way about as well.
What would your recommendation be? So recently I came across a credential pair dump in Pasteman.
Yeah.
Traced it back, and it was actually a small business in Wellington, and so it had their email password there, but I wasn't really sure what to do with it. Obviously I got this information, and if I can get this information easily, then anyone else can get it easily. I guess being a Wellington business, it kind of hits home a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I went onto the CERT website. Obviously there's breaches all over the place. If people want to find it, they're going to find it. But what should I do with that? Like,
yeah, so we've got...
Is it legal to get in contact with the business and just be like, heads up, dudes, like, maybe you should do something about the password?
I'm not a lawyer.
No. Well, this is the thing. I didn't want to hit them up because I was like, I don't want to get beef on me.
Yeah. Look, we do an awful lot of vulnerability coordination, and that's where people see something like you, they report it to us, probably 20, 30 a week, and we go to the system owner, the application owner, the site owner, etc. And we talk to them and we say, hey, here's your problem. And we spend that time trying to build some trust. And it's like, everyone thinks that we're some kind of scammer or some kind of phishing attack. We send them an email and they're like phishing. We try and call them and they're like phone scammer. No one from the government would call me to help me. Probably shouldn't have said that. And so, we work with them to do exactly that. On our website, under guides, I think it's got coordinating a vulnerability or disclosing a vulnerability to CERT.
I think I went under it, but
yeah,
it wasn't anything really about
credential dumps and stuff. Yeah, if you follow that process, we still do it for those credential dump things. We also have our own pastebin scrapers and stuff like that to sort of gather that information for New Zealand. So sometimes people will report stuff to us that we'll already have, and that's totally cool, right? That the system's working, right? As far as I'm concerned, that's totally fine. With that, the way that service works is, sometimes we're getting something because there's non-persistent cross-site scripting in a website. Sometimes it's because there's some critical system that's used by a whole lot of really important things that might be protecting people's lives that has remote code execution. And we've got to juggle all of that sort of stuff. So sometimes things take a while, and sometimes we will pull people off stuff to coordinate something. When you're sending it through to us, it's best if you use PGP, because that way we have more control over who has access to that sort of thing. We recognize that PGP is not particularly user-friendly, especially for people that have workstations or mail clients that they don't administer. So, if you're working at a larger organization or something like that, PGP can be a pain in the backside. We also know that there's been a few people that have had difficulty using PGP trying to coordinate with us.
Where do you find your PGP? On the website. Is it on the website? It's on the website.
Yeah, you just go in there. And I think it's also on MIT, pgp.mit.edu, the PGP server that most people would use. But yeah, if you go on the policy thing, it says the things that we need, and read through it, because it's got important stuff in there about, the process and what we need from you and what you can expect from us and all that kind of stuff. And yeah. Cheers.
What about the inverse of that situation? So say I'm a business and I want to reach out to you guys. So if you do find anything about us, you've got an easy way to contact us.
Yeah.
Do we just go through a similar channel and say, hey, I'm blah, you know, here's my details. If you do need to contact us?
That's not something that we have the capacity to do automatically at the moment. I tried to set up a trial of exactly that, where people could give us, you know, their ASNs or their IPs or their net blocks or whatever, and if we saw it, we would be able to just like automatically route stuff over to them and all that kind of stuff. And we were going to run it as a 3-month pilot. So this was last year. So because we've only just stood up, last year we were basically kind of throwing stuff at the walls and see what would stick. We weren't able to get organizations that, you know, in the week that we had to make a decision about whether or not we were going to do that. So we've pushed it out. So it's something that's totally on my mind, and it's a service that I'd really like us to have, but we just don't do that right now. So because for it to meaningfully work, we need to be able to sort of put that into a programmatic system and assign it to you and flag things as it comes through and everything else. And we just don't have that capacity because we didn't build the systems to do that.
But do you just have a list of names and phone numbers that you can put people on, other contacts with companies?
Yes, but it's not linked in with how we do that. Right. So it'd be a lot of backwardsing and forwardsing to every piece of information that came through. Yeah, it will come. We're a small team.
Does CERT have a relationship with NetSafe New Zealand, like with the public outreach and giving advice to businesses and stuff?
Yeah, so we work very closely with New Zealand Police, NetSafe and DIA. We transfer things and have quite a lot of conversations with NetSafe because quite a lot of our things, well, actually not that much by numbers, but some of the incidents that we handle have a harmful digital communication component. Likewise, some of the things that NetSafe handle have a kind of a CERT cybercrime or InfoSec component. So sometimes we will, someone will contact us and we'll say, hey, actually, it's, you know, let me send your information over here because these people will be able to help you better. Likewise, vice versa. And sometimes we work together on things where we're both, you know, providing help and assistance at the same time. We work really closely. Likewise with DIA, with the messaging compliance unit, we work. You know, phishing email is spam, for example. So, you know, we share information with them. We work with all that kind of stuff. Likewise, a lot of things that people report to us are a crime. So, you know, if you receive a phishing email and it says click on these things and do this stuff, and you do those things, and then a result of that you get defrauded out of $100,000. Well, you know, we can, you know, help you report that to the police and get that into their system and all that kind of stuff. So in those situations where we share information with outside agencies, it is explicitly with consent. So if you say, I don't want this to go anywhere, I only want it to report it to you, that's exactly what will happen. If you say, I want you guys to help us with this, I want to report it to you, but I also want you to share it with other agencies that you work with so that, you know, different people can give you the different support, we'll absolutely do that. And we do also work with NCSC when something has a kind of a national security quack like a duck thing, and all of those cases are explicitly with consent. So for example, if you came to us and it looked like something that they'd be interested in, we'd say, hey, there might be someone up the road that could help you with this. And then we kind of hand over and go about our day. Cool. Well, that's my 3 case studies, which we get to the Q&A, which we've been kind of healthily having as we go along, which is totally cool. How much more time have we got, Greg?
As much as you want, until people fall asleep.
Cool. Does anyone have, you know, any other questions? I can blabber on about all sorts of stuff, CERT related probably.
Just a bit more with the statutory or the background of certs.
Yeah.
What got it set up?
Yep. Yeah, so we have no legal, there's no law, there's no statutory thing. We're just here to try and help people. We have no regulatory capabilities whatsoever. We can ask nicely. So going back to the vulnerability disclosure stuff, you know, I have tried to tell people that their website is compromised and that, you know, there's all sorts of badness going on, and they have in no certain terms let me know that that's not something that they wish to discuss at that present moment, and maybe I'd like to not talk to them ever again. So that's, you know, and that's just something that happens, and that's pretty annoying, but that's just life. Likewise, no one has to report anything to us. So, you know, there's a lot of InfoSec problems going on in New Zealand that we have absolutely no idea about. You know, there are a couple of thousand that we do. So, yeah, it's really just, my personal opinion is that I think that that's a great place for us to be, because if we were, there's no potential perverse outcome by engaging with us. It's not like, you know, you engage with us and we'll give you a fine for doing something wrong, right? It's just, we can't, it's never going to happen. And the other thing is that it forces us to provide value with our interactions with people. So an example of something that occurred recently, an organization contacted us and said, hey, we think we've got this incident, it involves this other site, you know, what do you guys think? And so we went through and we looked at it all, and we're like, not really seeing what you're seeing here. Can you give us a little bit more? And then they gave us, you know, a packet dump, and then they gave us the IDS rules that triggered it. And then we had a bit of a look at that, and we're like, oh, okay, well, here is your problem. And, you know, it's a false positive for this reason and that reason and the other reason. And that was, you know, that was kind of cool. That was a larger organization. They had an InfoSec team, and they were about to invest a lot of money in something. And we were able to sort of, you know, guide them into something that it saved them a lot of time and a lot of money. And that's something that, you know, hopefully they really appreciate. And likewise, not being, we don't charge for anything that we do. And that means that, you know, it can be Mrs. Miggins from Gore, right? Saying, hey, you know, I received this it was a pretty short period of time for us to be stood up. I think that it was Minister Adams that made the announcement early 2016. I think I started on the establishment project in July, and then we went live April 11th last year. And that included working out who we were and what we did, designing all the systems, hiring the staff, getting the office, everything, greenfields, building systems, waiting for vendors to send us hardware, and going live in about, I don't know, 9 months or something, I think. So it was very, very heavily compressed to try and get everything done. You know, hence the pilots and the trial services, and we'll just see this, and if it doesn't work, we'll just fail quickly and move on to the next kind of thing. And what we've been doing since is, you know, expanding our systems and working out what we can do better and what we can do to automate things and stuff like that. So we are, you know, we're 17 people, and that includes everything and everyone: legal, policy, incident responders, director, me, the full shebang. And that means that we do a lot of work. Is, I guess, the short way of describing that. But we get to do interesting and cool things as well.
You don't charge for your services. How do you fund it?
So there is, we have a specific budget item, and I think it's 4.7 million a year, I think. Which is, you know, reasonably modest. But yeah, so we were funded for 4 years. and hopefully that continues after the 4 years. Yes, yes.
So like with services like Abuse DB, for example, where you have like bulk data of like logs and stuff sent, would that be something that would be interested in kind of publicly sourcing data from, like say like what sort of probes do you get on New Zealand ASNs and stuff, the research side of things?
Yeah, so yes to a point. We have a maximum amount of data and a maximum number of use cases that we can run things through. So the way that we're kind of building systems to allow us to gather that the vulnerability data and the threat data and do meaningful things with it. We're just starting to look at how we can do that kind of co-research stuff with other organizations, but it needs to have a very specific use case that we're looking for. There needs to be something specific that that we need to sort of achieve by doing something. We don't really have the ability to go, here's a whole heap of data, let's find something cool in it, apart from the incident data, which is the core of what we've got.
Put an example of that, we say the MyWay.net, which happened earlier, like last year, like looking at how much, like looking from the perspective of a customer at a New Zealand ISP, like how many telnet probes they're getting in, and like markers of spread.
Yeah. So we work, you know, we work with international certs around, and we have a number of sources of information around that kind of stuff. We get a lot of great stuff from the likes of Shadow Server, and also a bunch of the European certs that have huge teams doing botnet tracking. I haven't gone and done the kind of the local other end of that stuff. And that's just because we've just been gathering it from, you know, other centralized sources that can give us that information kind of easily. But it's something that I'm personally interested in. And as we've got the capacity to try and roll out additional things and additional servers and do cool stuff, absolutely, I think that's something we can look into. Cool.
Cool, well, that's probably a good time for us to say thank you to Declan for his talk tonight.